You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
Is Will going to make a career jump as a full-time surfer because of HBO's 100-Foot Wave? Should we be stoked for the release of Part 2 of Dune for later this year? Is Ted Lasso Season 3 as good as Season 1 and 2? Is Amazon's Hunter's final season bringing the same gusto as Season 1? And has James Gunn given us his best in his last addition to the MCU before he jumped ship to the DC universe? This is Systematic Geekology, guys. I am your first-time lead host, Nick Polk, and I am here with Wilbo Baggins this Monday morning. How are you doing, Will?
Good. It's definitely a Monday. Catch up Monday on we do comic book catch up. Well, today's catch up Monday around the office and things. But yeah, man, I saw an incredible movie over the weekend, and I'm catching up on my shows. So I'm really excited for this What's New episode with Nick leading the charge.
Yeah, man. Hey, did you? I guess too. It was Free Comic Book Day this weekend. Did you participate?
I did. I had a funeral on Saturday. So what I did is I was like, how do I head to my local comic book store and grab some free comics? Do I go before in the morning with the crowd, or I wait till the afternoon and there'll still be stuff around? Well, I waited to the afternoon and there was still a big crowd at my local comic book store, and Ultimate Comics, which does North Carolina Comic Con. They have like 4 different locations around North Carolina. They're almost a franchise at this point. And I know the comic book store owner. I know him pretty well. And they always do a great job with Free Comic Book Day, and they did a good job. I mean, Free Comic Book Day is they throw out some stories that that people love or maybe have read before, or teasers for upcoming books to kind of tease you or lure you in to get into the comic book game, and then they have like age appropriate for all comic book fans of all ages, from little kids all the way up to lifelong comic book fans. So it was great. They put out some good stuff. There were some fun little stories and some stuff coming down the road that made me excited to get.
Man, I had forgot about Free Comic Book Day, and then I was on Instagram on Saturday, and our local comic shop is called Rick's Comic City, and they had posted their line, and I was like, oh man, it's Free Comic Day, or Free Comic Book Day, and I missed it. But also, I was busy a little bit graduating.
Yeah. So, congratulations for graduating. You're now a master. That's right. I'll be your Padawan. You can be my English professor, English teacher, master, and lead me down the right road to.
I would be glad to professor you. As long as you pass for me.
Yeah. Well, in terms of what's new, like it was a fantastic geeky week. You had May the 4th, and then you had a brand new MCU movie, and then you had Free Comic Book Day. I was like, man, Marvel does a great job in kind of linking up and syncing up the synergy around like a brand new movie with Free Comic Book Day. And then the fact that May the 4th is there along with it, with all the Star Wars stuff dropping, or people celebrating the anniversary of Return of the Jedi, all that stuff. Just like last week was a good geeky week for sure.
Disney, we've talked about Disney knows how to coordinate a pop cultural religious experience.
Yes, they do.
Well, cool, man. I'm glad that you got to participate and got to get some cool comics and see the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But before we jump into that, tell me what you, besides comics and Star Wars and all that good stuff, what you've been nerding out on lately, Will.
Yeah. Is this where we want to jump into the what's new, kind of the nerding out of the part, or something different? Yeah. Okay. I feel like there's a lot of cool shows that are out that Singer and I are just kind of watching and trying to figure out what mood we're in. What mood are we in? Are we going to watch like a toxic family and the corporate world with Succession on HBO, or are we going to go feel good with Ted Lasso, or are we going to go geeky and do something Star Wars? There's also the main thing I've been geeking out on. Everyone knows I'm a big time surfer, lifelong surfer, and it's the thing other than my family and Star Wars is probably the thing I think about the most daily. Surfing, checking webcams, and trying to figure out when I'm going to get back down to the coast to catch a wave. But HBO has a documentary called The 100-Foot Wave, and it's in season 2. And so the first season was really about this big wave surfer who put this big wave surfing spot on the map, Nazaré, Portugal. And so McNamara is this big wave surfer from Hawaii, and he didn't necessarily discover this wave in Portugal, but he definitely put it on the map and lured other big wave surfers to come surf this like monster wave. And if you ever see like the press pick up like world record breaking wave from surfer from Brazil or Hawaii, usually it's a picture of Nazaré in Portugal. And so it's really the documentary season one is just kind of what happened and how he found it and where he was, how he just kind of let other people know what this spot is and put it on the map in big wave surfing. And then season two is kind of going back to this spot within the world of COVID. So they filmed it in 2020, 2021, right when COVID was happening. And so you kind of get a picture of how things were shutting down and what they're opening up and all those kind of dynamics. But man, like with all things, there is different genres and versions of a particular geeky subjects, right? So, like if you, I'm trying to think of now. Okay, so there's different, like within Christendom, there's different spiritualities and denominations. You have Orthodox, you have like the spiritual but not religious, you have the Methodists, you have the Lutherans, you have the Catholic, you have High Church, you have Low Church. In surfing, you have the same thing. You have people who just go out and surf for fun, right? Then you have like this kind of surfing at its base is kind of like this rebellious kind of movement of sticking it to the man, that I'm not going to work in your corporate world. I'm just going to go surf, man. And it's kind of got this hippie vibes to it. Like, down with the man, we're going to go surf. So they're rebel. But then you have like organized surfing, professional surfing. You have the marketing and capitalism of surfing, that they want to be mainstream with the boards they're selling to make money on the clothes and the lifestyle and that kind of thing. And then you have the World Surf League, which is like the NBA or PGA of professional surfing that goes around the world, and people make money being professional surfers. The best surfers in the world want to make it on the dream tour and go surf these amazing spots and compete and say who's the best surfer. And so within all these different kind of genres and personalities of surfing, you have big wave surfing. Me, I grew up on the East Coast, so I feel like I'm a small wave champion. Give me any kind of small wave, I'm going to surf it. But big wave surfing is a whole different ball game when it comes to how you surf these giant waves, whether you tow into them with a jet ski and they sling you into the wave because the wave's so big you can't even paddle into it, or the type of surfboard you have to use for these monster waves that are literally 80 feet. And the quest for this documentary is there a wave that's 100 feet out there somewhere in the world that perhaps one day somebody will surf it? And this documentary goes into the personalities around big wave surfing, and then what they do to get ready for it, and then the heartbreak of, because when they wipe out, man, you could lose your life. It's one thing if I fall on a waist high wave at Wrightsville Beach. Sure, I got to watch out for shallow water. I don't want to break my neck or skin up my knee. But man, when you're surfing, literally when the wave breaks and the white water is taller than a building coming at you, you got to figure out like how you're going to survive that. How you're going to hold your breath. How long can you hold your breath underwater and all that stuff. So it's fascinating. I love it. So if you want to learn more about surfing in general and particularly big wave surfing, 100 Foot Wave is definitely a documentary on HBO you should check out.
Dude, I love, like, that was probably out of the things that you talked about for new stuff as we were preparing for the episode. That was the thing I was kind of geeking out on harder than anything else. Like, I'm probably going to go see that like first thing this week.
Nice.
Because I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Florida, and so we didn't really have any waves. But we would go when hurricanes happened, and we would tropical storms, and we would surf. And I did a lot of skimboarding as well growing up. And loved surfer movies, and a lot of surfer videos that I watched was more of like the punk rock early stuff, where the videotapes had like, they had like Pennywise on the videos, and, basically like that culture of like, I'm not going to be part of your 9 to 5 type of stuff. And then, have you seen the movie Surf's Up, the animated penguin surfing movie? Oh,
it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite movies of all times. Like there was a summer where one of my best friends stayed at my house for a summer, and we would go to the beach, we would skimboard, we would do our thing almost every day. We both had summer jobs. We'd go to work and we'd come back to my house and we'd either we'd play Madden and then we'd go to bed to Surf's Up like every night. It was like routine, man.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, similar to like surfing. I mean, skate. You have the skate culture, skateboarding. You know,
Right.
so you have like professional skateboarders who want to be in the X Games, be in ESPN, and seen like as a legit sport. And then you have like the rebellious, like we're going to skate down this bank stairwell and grind on the rails, and no skateboarding alive. We're going to tear that sign down and do what we want to do. Bones Brigade, Power Peralta stuff. But the surfing is similar. Like you have the mainstream, the competitive surfing, and they have their Instagram account. They want as many followers, and they want to push a product. They have stickers on their boards because they're sponsored. But then you have the group that are like, yeah, like you said, have the surf videos or the clips of like hardcore punk, Pennywise, Black Flag, all that stuff, and they're rebelling against the machine, raging against the machine with their surfing. And yeah, as a Gulf Coast, yeah, you had to, similar to me, Rice Beach gets pretty good waves every now and then with the change of the seasons. But yeah, for East Coasters and Gulf Coasters, you have to wait for the hurricanes. And as horrible as they are in destruction and how we don't want to see how lives are upended and people lose their lives, for people who like to surf on the East Coast, that's how you're only going to get the big waves of consequence that you see on these videos.
Right.
And so I'll chase hurricanes, and I'll chase and plot where they're going and see where I need to go days before they hit. And Gulf Coast is the same thing. I spent some time down in South Florida with my first church, and you didn't get many waves until there was a storm out in the Atlantic, and you had to chase it down. But yeah, Surf's Up it's fantastic. We should do a whole episode on Surf's Up because not only is the animation great, but I think what it gets at in terms of what surfing is and the soul of surfing, and also the competitive part of surfing, and what are you chasing? Are you a free surfer, soul surfer, or are you just out for fame, like with anything? You do it for the love. How do you understand the waves and the ocean? And when I do a surf camp at my one of our Lutheran camps for years, I did surf camp and do a week of camp. That's one of the movies we would watch at night with popcorn and say, all right, kids, let them get a couple days in the ocean, getting sunburned and beat up by the waves and the surfboard. And then we show them Surf's Up to kind of do a little Zen teaching moment with them about what surfing really is about.
Man, I'm jealous of that. I wish I had gone to surf camp. And man, like you said, that whole movie, the art is great. The spirit of it is great. The soundtrack is amazing. Like I have that soundtrack
Jack Johnson.
on my phone. My God.
Who is a surfer. Grew up surfing North Shore. Yep.
Yeah, man. Well, I will have us transition because I could talk about surfing all day with you.
Yeah. We'll do that. We'll do that again at another point.
Ooh, stay tuned, listeners. But we'll move from a sea of water to a sea of sand as we talk about the announcement, the newly announced part 2 for Dune that's going to be released later this year in November. And for some of y'all who have maybe read Dune, if you read the first book, or maybe you've done a deep dive into the whole series, I have not. I've only read the first book because I've heard other fans say that the other 5-6 books are complete garbage. I don't feel that way, but I also haven't read it. But I haven't decided to make the commitment. But apparently we got the first half of the first book for Dune, for the first movie that came out, which stars Timothy Chalamet. Oh my gosh, what's his name?
Zendaya.
Oh, yeah, Zendaya. Yeah, Zendaya. It's Zendaya, right? Yeah.
Or Zendaya.
I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, y'all. Who's the? I'm like blanking. I'm terrible in the midst of things like this. But the guy who plays Drax is in it too.
Batista.
Yeah. Just an amazing cast, and they're adding to it. Florence Pugh is going to be in part 2, and she played in Hawkeye and Black Widow. And we are going to get the latter half of the first book, which takes place a couple years later. And I guess they're going to bring some elements into second or third book in the series too. So, I'm kind of pumped.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, I think Dune as a whole, in terms of the sci-fi and that big, thick. I mean, as you know, you're a Tolkien scholar and expert. You know that you have the main story, and then you have the appendix and appendices and the details and the similarian, and then the extra writings. I think Dune has the same as a big, thick main
Oh
story, but
yeah.
then around it you have how do you expand that story even more? And so, fans of Dune and Frank's work is that they're diehards out there. He changed the game when it comes to like sci-fi, and you put up their best sci-fi stories of all time. He's always up at the top, and so they tried to do this movie in the '80s, and some people love it because of how bad it is, and some people hate it because of how just nutso it is, and then for them to redo it and do part one. I loved part one. It's on HBO now. You could go look at it. I think for those who come in just dry without like no prior knowledge to what Dune is or the history behind it and the original book, they kind of go in as like, wow, this was kind of a slow burn with methodical music, and then it ended weird. And they were like, well, there's a part two coming. And it's a two-parter. And it's let me show you how thick this book is and how they can't put it all in one movie. And people are like, oh, okay. Yeah, my family, I thought I had communicated with them about, that it was two parts, but that I guess not, or they missed it or weren't listening. And so when they left, it was like, that was a weird ending to a movie. I was like, nah, there's a whole nother 3-hour movie coming out after this one.
Dude, it made me happy just because, I was just a big fantasy guy for the longest time. And I remember hearing lots of people that I listened to podcasts about Tolkien with, and then other sci-fi fans. And they were like, if you don't read any other sci-fi, you got to read Dune. Like just read Dune. And I did, and like tore it up and fell in love with it. And like you said, the world building is crazy. Frank Herbert, who's the author of the book, he spent like 5 years researching like ecology and like different environments so that he could make like an ecologically like consistent planet. And like, you get to the underground and where the water is and the dunes and like the plants that are underground and like, just the revitalization of the planet. For those who have read the books and haven't, you should, because it's really interesting. It gets into issues about colonization and what happens when an empire comes and takes a world of its resources, those sort of things. And so, like I said, the world building is great. I would say read the book first. It makes the movie more enjoyable. But man, the movie is just, the atmosphere is fantastic. Hans Zimmer does the score, and it's Hans Zimmer. I know we're going to briefly touch on Muppets, but he did Muppet Treasure Island. I mean, come on,
nice.
One of the best Muppet scores of all time. He did Pirates of the Caribbean and things like that. But anyway, super good, super otherworldly feeling. Like I also have that movie soundtrack on my phone too, and listen to it frequently. For those of me, who've heard me, I'm like the biggest Tolkien nerd, but I think it's a better book to movie adaptation than the Lord of the Rings. Like I like the Lord of the Rings movies better, but this part one adaptation is probably the best movie to book adaptation I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And as we kind of talk about, things that we look forward to, they announced it coming out. They didn't necessarily release the trailer, but they released kind of the date of when it's coming out and that kind of stuff, and kind of creating some hype around that. I'm hopefully it's all shot and done, because we've got a writer's strike out there that, I hope it doesn't put things on hold when it comes to some movies that are coming out. There might be some things and delays that we're really looking forward to, but stuff that's already been shot and put in the bank, and then post edit kind of stuff. Hopefully they can keep working on it till and won't get delayed, because I think it's supposed to come out in November.
Yeah, I was looking up stuff, and a lot of the things I saw as far as articles didn't mention any writer strikes or any delays. But that could also be an intentional thing of the algorithm to make sure that we stay hyped and pay money for part two. which I will be regardless if it comes out in November or not, because the first movie was excellent. And because they were talking about like they weren't going to make part 2 unless the first part was successful, which is interesting. And it was successful, obviously. But yeah, apparently.
I love that threat of the fans. Hey, you need to come out and support this movie, because if you don't, we're not going to make part 2. We're going to leave you hanging. And they're like, okay. I know it takes a lot of money and time, but they're like, yeah, we're not going to film this entire movie back to back, and unless you really support the first one. So, and when everybody's cutting costs and trying to figure out what the new normal is when it comes to like post-pandemic streaming and movies and shows and writing, they were like, yeah, we're going to throw this out there, and then if it doesn't make money, we're not going to do part 2. But here you go. What do you think?
Yeah, I bought the movie too, just because I have a lot of streaming services, as most of us do. But it was one of those where I was like, I would need part 2 in my life. I need to figure out ways to show them that I want them. Take my money, make me part 2.
Yeah. And so as we're talking about things coming out, I just wanted to real quickly say one thing I'm really excited about. I'm a big Muppets fan. And I think Kino and I did a whole episode on Muppets. You can go back in the archives and find that one. I was geeking out on just Muppets in general. But and I've always thought about, and I think Disney, when they acquired the IP of the Muppets, try to figure out what to do next. What kind of show? Does a variety show like old? Or are they going to try to do a reality show? Do we age this up? Do we age it down? Like where do we do with the Muppets? Similar to like what they do with Star Wars. I think, how do we handle this IP? Sometimes they've done it well. Sometimes they haven't done it so well. But there's this week, as we're recording, a new show is coming out called Muppets Mayhem, where they're focusing in on the Electric Mayhem, that kind of funk psychedelic band. That's a part of the Muppets. They get their own show, so we get to follow them. As I don't know what it's going to take, if it's they're trying to go back on tour, if it's episodic or just a movie. I need to look in that. But on May 10th it drops, and so I get a new Muppet show, a new Muppet movie with a bunch of cameos with musicians and actors. That Kevin Smith was even like, I put this on hold for a long time. I couldn't talk about it, but I get to be in a Muppet show, and he was so hyped about making an appearance within this. And that band with Animal and the Mr. Teeth, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm definitely going to be right up, pull up a chair and popcorn and geek out hard over the new Muppet show dropping on Disney Plus.
Well, they were like the main focus of like the Muppets movie, right? That came out, right? It was called like the Muppet movie, right? And then it had like the band was the focus, right?
No, that the original Muppet movie, it was basically Kermit, wanting to go to Hollywood, but then also being chased by the Hopper, who wants to like tear off his legs and have frog legs. It was kind of twisted as a kid, but along the way, the journey was kind of like this Pilgrim's Progress or like Lord of the Rings, where they're picking up people along the way and meeting people along the way to Hollywood. And one of the stops is they stumble into this old church where this band is playing, and one of the best songs of the whole movie is they meet the band, and they kind of go along. So they meet people along the way as they head out to Hollywood to make it. And so, the first appearances and how they're brought in. But yeah, it's an old rundown church, and they discovered the psychedelic punk funk band that's just wants to make some music. And yeah, man. And then you got Animal playing drums. Is there a better character than Animal out there?
I don't think so.
Probably. I don't think so.
I feel like every drummer that I've ever heard who lived or grew up around the Muppets has talked about, I wanted to play drums because of Animal. Like, I'm pretty sure I've heard like so many professional and like drummers that I know just being like, Animal is my inspiration.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm ready for a Mayhem origin story. So I also love the Muppets. So a little bit of Muppet world building that I will also jump into. So, Will, tell us about Ted Lasso, because I am one of those lamos who have not jumped on the Ted Lasso train, not because I don't want to, but just because as I finish school, so I plan to revamp my nerdy, just catching up with everything. But I've heard lots of mixed feelings about season 3, because season 1, everyone was like, it's amazing, it's incredible. Season 2, same thing. And season 3, I've heard a little bit of mixed feelings. So tell us your feelings about season 3.
So you haven't watched any Ted Lasso season 1 or 2?
I have not. I know story plot lines and kind of like the plot, like what he's doing in the UK, as an American coach, and how he gets up in that situation, and his familial problems and things like that. But
Yeah. I think like even if you're not a soccer fan, so if you're like, I'm not interested in soccer, why would I watch the show? Soccer is just the tool and means by which to go into like the dynamics of human relationships, whether it's father son, a team, a sports team, and how they can work together, coaches, your nuclear family, your immediate family, then extended family and friendships, your boss, and who's your boss and who you work for and what's your purpose behind all those questions. And it's just an amazing show. And it's just peak television. And I think the drama, it's funny. It tugs on your heart. You tear up in moments. You really feel for the characters. It's such a good show. I love season 1. Season 2, I was like, okay, how are we doing this? Where are we going? I thought it really went into like mental health and just such a healthy way. And then season 3, I think when you get to the third season or even the third movie of a trilogy, you're like, all right, how are we going to do this different? How are we going to tell the same story with these characters we really love? We want them to be who we loved in season 1 and season 2, but also tell a different one and move it forward. And they announced that this is the last season. They're only doing 3 seasons. So, how do you land this plane? Where is it going? And so there have been some episodes where I'm like, yeah, it's more of the same. Maybe it's getting long in the tooth. Maybe I'm getting a little bored with it. There's been a couple episodes like halfway through, I'm checking my phone. I'm like, why am I checking my phone? Like the show's on, And so, but there's been a few episodes where I was like, that's one of the best episodes of just TV I've ever seen in terms of how they weave in and out the relationships and talk about how they live with each other and work with each other and the pressures they're dealing with. I thought longing for love and authentic relationships, like there's the mid-season break. It's on Apple Plus. And so I think they did 6 or 7 episodes and then they took like a week-long break and then they're going to do another 6. But the one before, they took a little short break, was one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen. And as a Chicago Bulls watching Michael Jordan play basketball fan, they even have that within that particular episode. And I was all in, man. It was so good.
Man, you talked about it, and I've talked about, you have the same tone of voice that everyone else who I've talked to about the show. Like when this show was announced, and I think like, I was kind of like, okay, whatever. Like it's a comedy, like a dramedy, with Jason Sudeikis, which I really like him a lot. But it was not long afterwards that like everybody was like passionate about this show. That, like you said, like I had friends who have tattoos of like Ted Lasso tattoos because of the show, and like I feel like it was, as soon as it released, it had like a giant following. Like people have merch, they have hats. Like I feel like a lot of people in religious communities have talked about like the connections between some of the themes and their own religious journeys and their spiritualities and church relationships and pastoring. And like, I feel like a quarter of the men that go to my church have Ted Lasso gear that they wear at church. Like they'll have the hats with like, the symbol or whatever. And, different button up shirts with, different elements from the TV show. But, it's one, yeah.
Yeah. And it's those things like it won an Emmy and it got popular, and then it started selling merch. And so when things get popular, how do you hang on to the original intent, or does it sell out and go a different direction? I don't think it's sold out or anything, but yeah, when things get really popular, how do you hold on to the charm of what it was at the beginning? And so that might be what season 3 is dealing with. But yeah, I have a friend of mine, pastor friend of mine, Matt Titus, who wrote a book, The Gospel According to Ted Lasso, that you can use as a Bible study. So I'll throw that plug out there if anybody out there wants to do that in their church. I mean, it is like, it's got language, it's got situations that aren't necessarily like kid friendly, but like for mature adults who can handle those things, like you could really do like a good Bible study exploration of the themes you see in there when it comes to human relationships, and that what makes it just so great when it comes to those things. So yeah, I can't recommend that enough.
That's what's up. Yeah, I'll get on it. And I think we've talked about too, shows who don't overstay their welcome tend to be a lot better. And it sounds like they're trying to do that, which is cool.
Yep.
So another show that's kind of doing that too is Amazon's Hunters, which is this is their second and final season. And so the first season came out during like the pandemic. I think it was like in the middle of 2020. And so the show is basically in the 70s, centered around a Jewish kid in New York, I think. Yeah, New York. And it's either that or Chicago. But anyway, he's a Jewish kid. He's a nerd. He lives with his grandma. His parents died. And his grandma was a survivor of the Holocaust. And so he ends up getting connected with people that she was connected with who end up being Nazi hunters, who they go around the United States, and they find Nazis who came over from like a project or a Operation Paperclip, and they find them in the United States and hunt them down. And so it's interesting too, they connect a lot of it with nerd culture, because the main character, which his name is Jonah, he works at a comic shop. And one of his best friends works at a comic shop. And actually what motivates him, because he keeps getting recruited, and they talk to him about, he's like, his grandmother ends up dying, and it's connected to like Nazis. And he ends up, he's like resistant to joining this movement, because obviously you have to like kill Nazis and stuff. And it's very secret and against the law. And his friend ends up getting killed in the comic shop while he's working, and it motivates him to jumpstart into to join this group. And so anyway, so the first show, he joins Nazi Hunters. He finds this guy who dated his grandma, who claims to be a survivor of the Holocaust, and finds out that this guy who is pretending to be this old Jew who's kind of funding, this thing, was actually a doctor in one of the concentration camps. And so he gets like betrayed, but it's also this guy who funds the whole issue of the story. So season 2 is at the end of season 1, we find out the crew gets broken up, a couple people die, and because of this last mission, they're trying to like really take out a huge neo-Nazi organization. It ends up not working. And a lot of the main people who they're trying to target and get rid of flee to Argentina. And in the show, Hitler is still alive and being harbored in Argentina. So now season 2 is about these Nazi hunters trying to come back together to find Hitler and kill him. So anyway,
what's the time period when it's set in? Is it set like in the 40s or 50s?
Mid-70s.
Mid-70s.
So this is like, 30 years later, dealing with like the direct aftermath of World War II. And so let's see, the first season's like 1976, I think. And the second season's 1979. And the main character he's not in the United States, he's in Paris now. And so there's a main villain who's like a Nazi, but he's a politician in the United States, and they weren't able to get him. But he finds out that this Nazi politician likes to come to Paris to a certain brothel. So it opens up with him in Paris, going to this brothel every day for a year until the guy finally comes and he catches him and kills him, and finds out that basically that Hitler is still alive. And so anyway, that jump starts the whole season too. So it just deals with a lot of really interesting themes, like, like what do you do as a person how do you address evils in the world? How do you address systemic racism? Do you do it with violence? Do you do it with peace? What's the margin between, complacency and action? And it deals with a lot of that stuff. And it's really not a black and white show. It's one of those that I think I journaled when that show first came out, like just did a lot of internal wrestling. Because even then too, George Floyd had happened, all these other things. And I was like, this show really spoke into it, the dealings of systemic racism and things like that. So anyway, the show is action packed. It's got a comedy element to it. And also, who doesn't like to see Nazis get totally pulverized?
I think Nazis don't like that, but that's okay.
True.
Yeah. Well, our mutual friend Trifil is doing a class on Bonhoeffer, and Bonhoeffer's life and history and work and martyrdom, it stems from like his resistance against fascism and Nazi and Hitler and that whole thing. Like, he's a Lutheran theologian and pastor who, leading a resistance against Hitler, but also a plot to assassinate him. So like is killing or murder or assassination at any time justified? We would think that when it comes to Hitler, it gets really close to saying yes. But then if you're a pacifist, you have to wrestle with those things too. So I think the whole class, it deals with the writings of Bonhoeffer and where we are as a nation. And I hate that Bonhoeffer's writings still hold up, but they definitely still do. So I'm hopping in that class and Bonhoeffer is, of course, I'm a fan of his work and what he stood for, and challenges me as a pastor and as a disciple and as a person who's living in a world that still wrestling with these things. So I have not watched Hunters, but I've heard about it, and then you talking about it makes me go, okay, I'll put that in the queue, put that on the list for sure.
Oh yeah, the cast is crazy too. Al Pacino's in it, and there's like a Josh Radnor and 1,000,001 other actors that join in and come in for season 2 as well. But yeah, so we've got that. Let's switch back to Nazi related IPs. What about Star Wars Vision, man? Tell us.
Well, if we're talking about we can talk about empire. We can talk about imperialism. We can talk about resistance. So stormtroopers. We can. So true. Really, but it is a transition there because we're going to talk about sci-fi Guardians of the Galaxy. We promise we'll get there, folks. I won't spend too long on Star Wars Visions, other than that's what Disney decided to drop on May 4th on their platform to kind of give some new content out there to Star Wars fans. They had a season 1, and basically, what if the main top anime studios did their own version of like Star Wars or Star Wars theme shorts or cartoons, anime. And I love season 1. They played around with a lot of different styles and versions. There's no legacy characters there. Yoda doesn't show up. Luke Skywalker doesn't show up, but there's definitely lightsabers and talking of dualism of the light and the dark and resistance and empire and all those things. So I enjoyed season 1. Season 2 dropped. I really have, now that I know kind of what it is and what it isn't, I really was able to lean into it, and I've watched all but the final episode, and every episode is so different. The animation is so different. So one episode you have like 2D art that looks like The Last Airbender, which is my favorite animation style. And then another one, you have like a claymation stop motion, like Wallace and Gromit, kind of thing. And then you have one that's like half art paint / computer generated 3D and 2D together, which the first episode is that. And I've really liked it. I think some of my favorite Star Wars podcasts and fans out there have kind of questioned why this, and they'd like to see this done with more like in canon stuff. But I think allowing these anime studios not to have to wrestle with canon and legacy characters gives them the freedom to tell the story they want to tell.
Right.
But there's another element of like, maybe this is just one big like audition that whatever people gravitate to, whoever does the best job, it can't help but feel like, hey guys, do your best work. And then we might choose you to do the next big cartoon animated or movie within an animation style or anime style, and let you wrestle with a Mandalorian or a Luke Skywalker's Jedi training ground in one of these kind of animation styles. I would love that. But for the most part, I've had a really good time. There's some that hit more than others. There's one episode that I really, really loved, and it's called Journey to the Dark Head, and it's very Last Airbender style animation, and a Jedi wrestling with the dark side, and it's just a gorgeous little short. So if you don't watch any of them, watch that one. And then there's a quote from it where the Jedi who's been wrestling with a lot of stuff says, "Hope has as much weight as despair." And so that whole element of, Star Wars is about hope, and how much weight do you give hope, and how much does hope inspire you in the midst of really dark times and hard times. And so in our world, that particular phrase really kind of really hit me hard this week. Hope carries as much weight as despair, and which one are you going to feed? Which one are you going to give most attention to? Hope or despair? Not to ignore the problems of the world, but man, there's also a lot of hope too. So yeah, Star Wars Visions is fun. If you like anime, if you like that style, go in, have fun with it, hold it loosely because there's no major like big reveals of big kind of canon storylines, but hey, they have fun with it. These studios are doing a great job. So
Yeah,
dive right in.
I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I'll check that out. And I love when people explore extra canonical storylines, just to enjoy it and express their artistic talents in ways that maybe aren't connected with canon. That sounds really fun. So, we got Star Wars, we got Dune, and we got freaking Guardians of the Galaxy, man.
Yeah. I saw this movie. Let's just say spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie yet, pause right now, go watch the movie, and then come back because we are going to have some spoilers in here. I know Nick has, he was too busy graduating from a master's degree to go see the movie, so that's totally justified. But he doesn't mind the spoilers. I did hear somewhere that someone said that sometimes spoilers helps you get into the story even deeper because you're not so sitting with the anxiety or wondering what's going to happen next. And you're stressed that they're going to go a direction you don't want them to go into. Sometimes when you finally know what's going to happen, then you can sit and rest easy and just enjoy the story. So sometimes spoilers isn't bad. And that was kind of my experience at the end of this movie that we'll get to in a little bit. But I won't bury the lead. I will say Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is a fantastic way to wrap up this trilogy. The ending was fantastic. James Gunn knocked it out of the park. I loved this movie. It's one of my favorite MCU movies, I think, of all time. And I think it's because at the beginning, I was trying to figure out what they're doing. Is this going to be a grand cosmic story with big tie-ins to the next big thing in Marvel? No, it is a simple plot that unpacks again what makes this team so special in their relationship with one another. So the plot is Warlock, that was teased at the end of Volume 2, comes rushing in to where the Guardians are and on Nowhere, and he's trying to capture and steal and kidnap Rocket. And so battle ensues right from the get-go. You're like, oh, okay, we're starting this now. And big action. You almost get crash fatigue at the very beginning. Like, oh, wow, what are we doing here? But basically, he tries to kidnap Rocket. The team defends Rocket, but Rocket's pretty much on like getting ready to die. So they need to save Rocket. Like there's something attached with like his robotic enhancements and augmentation that there's a death switch or kill switch. And they got to figure out how to kill the kill switch. And so basically the plot is we're going to save Rocket's life. We got to go back to where they did this to him and find who did this to him from the very beginning and then try to save Rocket's life. And so that's basically the plot. And they do introduce different other side characters that you've known and loved throughout the whole trilogy. But yeah, as the adventure is, we got to save Rocket's life. In the midst of that, you have flashbacks of Rocket. You don't know Rocket's story. In other movies, they've said, they say, how did you become the way you are? You were just a raccoon. And then now you're like this like assassin, enhanced robotic cyborg raccoon. He's like, I'm not a raccoon, and then well, tell me your past. He goes, I'm not going to talk about that. Well, in this movie, you find out why he doesn't talk about it because there's some traumatic experiences from this new villain, the High Evolutionary, who experimented on animals and turned them into like superior robotic enhanced species. He's on the quest to perfect life. He's playing God. He wants to. The world is the way it is, and he's gonna tamper with it and enhance it. And he's smarter than everybody else. And so, man, he's a great villain to hate because he's the mad scientist. He's the Dr. Moreau. He's the one who is experimenting and torturing animals for the higher good and the higher purpose. So you're like, I hate this guy. Of course, if you try to do that to my dog or my beloved chipmunk in the church garden, then of course I would go after him and try to kill him. And so the soundtrack is incredible. all the stuff that James Gunn has done with the other two movies in the MCU is right in line and continuity with that. So the movie is just absolutely fantastic. You get to the end, and it puts a nice bow on top. He wraps it up. His team is done, and they even kind of set up perhaps a new team or another direction that someone else can run with, because James Gunn's hopping over to DC and got to curate all their lines of movies and stories. And so, man, he stuck the landing when it came to Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And he gets nice salute. Thanks MCU, and then his heading over to DC. So this movie is fantastic. If you're familiar with the other two movies and you love this team, I can't recommend this movie enough.
Man, and like the other two movies, I feel like out of all of the MCU, that Guardians of the Galaxy movies have had like probably the most distinctive individual flavor out of all of them, while being connected to the rest of the MCU. And all the other ones do too, right? You got Iron Man and Thor, and they have their own individual tastes and feelings. But I feel like there's just something really special and different about Guardians of the Galaxy, with the soundtrack, the direction that James Gunn brings, the comedy that brings, I think hits probably a lot more than some of the other comedy and some of the other ones do. Thor Ragnarok was my favorite, or not Ragnarok. Love and Thunder was probably my favorite Thor movie, but some of the comedy didn't really hit for me. And obviously then going back and reading the God Butcher saga and being like, dang, this is just levels beyond amazing. But I like the spoilers too, for me, because, I love thinking of the deep themes within movies, and that stuff doesn't really ruin the story for me. You were talking about, what they were doing with Rocket, and even some of those questions of like bringing the mad scientist of like, you did all these things about what is it? Oh gosh, the line from Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, where it's like,
oh, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's right. Yeah. So he's thinking about if you could and didn't think about if you should. Yeah. But yeah, I guess just thinking about the trauma behind, because we even talk about our culture, this, transhumanism, and how do we use technology to bolster the human experience? And there's obviously it seems like connected to Rocket, there's some trauma and maybe even some warnings, that we see.
Yeah. 100%. Because sometimes, as a religious leader, as a shepherd, as a pastor, I go into shows and movies, and whenever they portray a priest or a pastor who's an asshole or who is abusing their power or those kinds of things, I'm like, oh no, I feel like I got to defend and be like, we're not all like that. Yeah, there's some out there, but there's some good ones too, and in this movie, you had the mad scientists experimenting on animals and those things. And I feel like the other end, I was like, you know what? Science isn't all bad. There are some people who do great stuff out there. I'm diabetic. I have a continuous glucose monitor hooked to the side of my arm. I am a cyborg. It gives readings to my phone. And so I have a robot enhanced body right now. My dad has a pacemaker, who helps regulate his heartbeat. People wear contact lenses and glasses and put, hearing aids in their ear so they can hear what I'm trying to say to them on a Sunday morning or just in close proximity. So there's ways that we augment our body and use technology to help our human experience. There are people, and still even religious traditions today, that won't allow blood transfusions, or, no, don't take Tylenol or Advil. You're just playing God. Just live with the pain, but that's an extreme. But I think there's a way you can use science as a gift for others. So I felt like in this movie, I was on the other end going, but they're not all that way. Science that created vaccines over COVID are not experimenting and planting a chip inside you. Let's not get all like super, paranoid about these things. But he was a great villain, and it lifts up like how far is too far when it comes to those things. At what expense do you not value life? At the expense of like your goal of wanting your version of life in the world to exist. At one point in the movie, High Evolutionary is like, someone says like, oh God. And he's like, there is no God. That's why I have to step in, and finish it and do what I need to do. and then he's like, I've come here to perfect things. And Rocket looks at him and says, you didn't want perfection. You just didn't like the way life experience for you. So they play around with those kind of messages. And so even though high evolutionary is like, there is no God, there's a moment where Rocket's heartbeat stops and you're kind of like, okay, are we killing this dude? This is the final movie. Who are we killing off in this movie?
Right.
But he has this kind of like bright light, near death experience and encounters like some friends of his that have passed away. And they basically kind of whisper in his ear, like, yeah, you can come with us, but your story isn't done yet. In fact, the whole story's been about you. And you're like, holy crap. All right. All the Guardians have been all about Rocket. You could make that case. It's been about Star-Lord and others, but like when she whispers in his ear, this whole story has been your story. Tears running down my eye. And then he goes back to finish what he was called to do. And even, founder and host on this podcast, Joshua Noel, share with me, like he had a near-death experience himself. It was a major car wreck and had like a near-death religious experience, vision, and they enhanced his body with metal to literally put his body back together. And he was brought back to continue his life. And he feels like he has a higher purpose or like there's still more story to be told. And he's going to value the life and the gift of life that he's been given. And man, what a message. And so this movie does that, along with the hijinks, along with the comedy, along with like ridiculous things. You're like, oh my gosh, that's the cheesiest thing I ever think, but so funny. The soundtrack, there's some songs in there. I was like, oh, I forgot about that song. I'm going to when I go home, I'm putting that on the playlist. So yeah. And then I'll share like my movie experience was I went and saw this with friends opening night, Thursday night, 30 minutes to go in the movie. There's about 30, 40 minutes left. They drop Beastie Boys, No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a slow montage of them lining up, getting ready to do the final battle. And they're going to go and face what they need to face. And then the whole movie theater shuts down. So
awful, dude. Will sent me this video, y'all.
And it went dark. And then all of a sudden, the people, it's a full theater. People were like, WTF, what's going on? Turn it back on. And I felt so sorry for the movie theater. It's not like they did this on purpose. It's not like the manager's like, let's shut it down now. They had a power outage. I don't know if it was a storm or just something in the area, but they couldn't help the whole movie theater. Every theater and every movie that they were playing, the whole theater shut down. And so, but then people started doing like, as we were waiting, things came back up and you could hear the audio. So the movie was still going. We just couldn't see what was happening because the screen or the projector or whatever's happened digitally wasn't projecting up on the screen. So it was kind of dark and you could still hear the movie playing. So I'm hearing the battle. I'm hearing people getting killed. I'm hearing voices. I'm hearing these big poignant moments in the movie. And I'm like, was that Rocket? Did he just die? Maybe I should leave. Maybe I should go. Was that Star-Lord? I think he just died. Well, nope, there's his voice. Maybe he came back. So I'm wrestling with these things. And you get to we go outside and the manager's like, we'll give you free movie passes, but I think if you need to leave and bail, you can always come back. And it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to come back and watch this whole movie all the way through again. Right. To wait. I have this recording I want to do with Nick where I want to talk about it. I want to finish this freaking movie. And I think I just got some spoilers. Listen to the audio. But then they were like, I think we're going to get it back up in about 30 minutes. So Cindy and I wait. Most of the people leave, and so Cindy and I wait with about a handful of others.
How long did you wait?
Hang out. We waited about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, part of that was like wondering what's going on. And so like 15, 20 minutes was like, is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? What happened? Is it going to hop right back up? Those kinds of things. And then, but then when they say, well, I think we get it back up in about 30 minutes. And then the guy brings in his computer and he's like, all right, where did you guys leave off? And we're like, well, right where the Beastie Boys are dropping No Sleep Till Brooklyn. He's like, I haven't seen the movie. Where is that? So I had to look on his computer and find the time stop of where the movie is started. So he hit play a little bit beforehand. And it was, so I'm glad I stayed because it was amazing. What happened after No Sleep Till Brooklyn when they go in this kind of hallway fight scene is one of the best moments in all the MCU when it comes to like a fight hallway scene. Better than the Daredevil hallway scene.
Really?
Like it is It is so freaking good. And what they do and how they wrap this thing up towards the end and some of the lines that they say and set up or really put the bow on the movie and then kind of set up like there's still some options out there they can run with this team. It's not like the Guardians are never going to show back up again. Some people, some characters have moved on. Some are going to stay and create a new team. And it was so great. So yeah, that was my movie experience. I was dedicated. I hung in there. Yeah, some people were creating shadow puppets up on the screen with their phones and laughing in the midst of the audio still going on in the background. So when everybody's trying to figure out what was happening, but for me, it enhanced the experience, a memorable experience. And knowing that some characters were not going to die, that anxiety left me, and I was like, okay, I can now enjoy this and like sit there, not worry that they're going to kill off a character or not.
Dude, even in the midst of technical difficulties, MCU theatrical experiences, bringing it all.
That's
man.
it. That is. It is. It was good. So the movie was fantastic. All the MCU goodness and the characters you love, but also some great themes about again, friendship, chosen family versus when your own blood family does you wrong, or I realize every single character in the Guardians just has like a crappy relationship with their like parents and family. But they came together and created their own family. And that's what was important to them in the midst of that. So that whole theme is there to the very, very end. And they create some new characters. There's the child or human trafficking experiment on animals for the benefit of science. All those things are there, and it's on the nose. You can't escape it. But even like human trafficking and what we do with humans is there. And then one of the children in the midst of that emerges there at the end, the kind of end credit scene as a new character that could be a part of the Guardians later on. I was like, oh man, they just powered her up. Oh, she is a deep cut in the Marvel cosmic comic book universe. I had to go look it up. I think that character is so-and-so from 2004 that they led, and that, and I think Marvel is setting up with some of these shows an extension, whether it's with Miss Marvel or whether it's with, what they did with Loki or the Winter Soldier, all those things. They're creating a young Avengers team that they could eventually pull these kids and teens and preteens together and create Love and Thunder. We have Love herself, right?
Oh yeah.
Could be a hero that they connect with this new character from the Guardians of the Galaxy to create a young Avengers team that I really would love to see. That's years away, but they really can set this up as having a new team, new generation of kids that can create Avengers or Guardians that would be awesome.
If we can get 50 years of Star Wars, we could probably get at least 30, 40 years of Marvel MCU movies.
Yeah, and I agree. Phase 4, there have been moments that were great, some moments that have been like kind of misses for me. And sometimes Marvel can get kind of cookie cutter, and you're like, man, I haven't all seen this before. It can get tired, it can get long in the tooth, And but if they regroup and deconstruct or reconstruct, or for a new generation, do some of these new characters, old characters, and pass on the baton to others, done right, a new story told right. It's going to be great. I mean, even Guardians of the Galaxy first emerged, there people were like, "What? You're going with this team?" They're not A-list superheroes, which also gave James Gunn the freedom to do whatever he want with it. There wasn't like a baggage that came with it. He was just going to tell his story and do like cosmic MCU and have a rad soundtrack with it and run with it. So maybe you could do the same with some of these young kids that could be the young Avengers later on down the road.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, just before we wrap it up, my wife does not like nerdy things, I was telling you before, but she saw Guardians of the Galaxy. And she enjoyed it. So that just speaks to that's just a testament to how awesome these movies are and how well James Gunn has done with Guardians of the Galaxy. So my wife likes the movies. Like, she goes with me, and but she doesn't have the baggage of reading the characters or like graphic novels on these things. And so I look at it through the lens of like these characters I love that I want to see portrayed up on the screen, and then I kind of check in with her and say like, how was that story just on its own without knowing like who these people are? Did it hold up? Did you understand what was going on? Did this character make sense? And she'll give me her opinion. No problem.
one of the big characters in this that we're really looking forward to see was Warlock, which has a long history within kind of the cosmic Marvel comic universe. And then he was teased. And then this particular movie, about halfway through, I was kind of like, that was one of my disappointments. I was kind of like, he seems kind of weird and like a joke and not really. I just felt like he was handled too flippantly. But by the time you get to the end, I'm like, oh, that's what they were doing with that character. He needed to grow. He was like a kid. He was a joke at the first. He was like the rest of the movie, seen as like kind of a throwaway experiment. But by the time he gets to the end of the movie, he's looking at the Guardians and seeing what is portrayed within their friendship. And he grows and learns from that, as seeing what is modeled for him of how to treat one another, how to respect life, how to be a family. Coming out of his own like experience or trauma, of what he's being used for as a tool, and then coming around full circle to being like, yeah, that's the group I want to be a part of. As much as misfits as they are, as much problems that they have, they're still a family. They pull for one another and defend one another. And that was a role model for Warlock to learn from. And eventually become a part of the next new Guardians team that possibly down the road. So I liked how they did that. Halfway through, I was like, I don't know. I don't like what they're doing with that character. I don't like that at all. By the end, I'm like, okay, I now see what they did. I like what they did. Cool. We had to get there. Growth moments. And my other criticism of the movie is like, there are times where there's a lot of special effects, a lot of crash fatigue, very busy. And, sometimes I want to lean into not just the CGI crash moments and action all over the place. I'd rather just sit with the characters to learn more about them. There's a balance when it comes to that. So there's some moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, another scene where people are being flown into buildings and shooting and all that stuff. But the way they handled it and the balance, I thought in the end it balanced itself out. And I want to go see it again in the theater. There haven't been too many MCU as of late movies that I wanted to go see again in the theater, but I'm definitely seeing this one again. There was one moment where they're flying to where they need to go and the song drops that I haven't heard in a while. Man, I need to go look it up. I forgot what this song was, but the bass line, I literally got goosebumps. And I was like, this is one of the coolest moments of all of this. I thought it was so cool. So the way he mixes music with the story itself, it's just so good. So, hey, rankings. I give it a 9+. Is it a perfect movie? No, but man, it's up there. It's what I needed at this time in a very geeky week of May, the first week of May, and then tying a bow to that particular James Gunn universe. I give it a high 9+, and we'll go see it again. And they tease things that come down the road, and I'm excited to see what could happen.
Will coming in, carrying us through the Guardians of the Galaxy discussion as I failed to watch it, but he's got high praise. He's got some hot takes. The hallway battle scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Volume 3 is apparently better than the Daredevil.
Just know when you go watch the movie, friends and listeners, if you go watch that movie or watch it again, know that I was hearing that happen in the dark, wondering what the hell was going on. But eventually I got to see it and I'm like, man, I'm so glad I did. Because I was like, well, I got to hear it. I kind of know the gist. I'll be good. But then me waiting for that was totally worth it. And then you drop Beastie Boys in there, I'm good. I'm in.
It's over with. You drop Beastie Boys in any action scene, it's over.
Boom. It's over. You got me.
Well, cool, man. You got any, besides, seeing Guardians of the Galaxy 3, you got any other recommendations for our listeners before we bail?
No, other than, if you want to learn about, we're heading towards the summer. We're heading toward the summer. So you can head to the beach. You can grab your skimboard, your boogie board, your surfboard, take a surf lesson, watch 100-foot wave, go watch Surfs Up, pull up some YouTube or Instagram. If you want some good Instagram/YouTube follows with some of the top surf pros, let me know. I'll send you some good recommendations when it comes to who to follow on Instagram and social media who throw clips out there of them surfing. And then if you want a surf lesson, reach out to me. I got a whole fleet of boards I can push into some waves and teach you how to surf. Yeah,
and he looks good doing it too. Just yeah.
Sometimes. my knee and back, and the glow off the top of my head isn't what it used to be. But yeah, I still catch waves. There are moments when I still got it.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. I second the Surf's Up. Go watch that, listeners and friends. It's, if you haven't seen it, one of my favorite.
And it is kid friendly. That is kid friendly. That is, yeah. So it's not. It is. You can watch it, pull it up with your kids of all ages, and have a blast with it.
Yeah, it's rated PG. I think just for some crude humor because they like fart and stuff like that. But it's a great movie. Excellent movie. So. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. If you want to hear more from Will about any other episodes that he's on where he talks about surfing and various other Marvel IPs, you can go to the website, systematicgeekology.com, where you can also check out episodes I've been on. And if you missed, maybe you missed Christian, maybe you missed Pang, maybe you missed Josh, go to the website. You can find their stuff too. There we've got merch. We've got links to Patreon where you can come on. We've got our Discord where you can come and hang out with all of us and do some nerding out with us. And where you can come and suggest future episodes and topics. We like to interact with our listeners and friends. So from that, come hang out with us. And just remember that we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries podcast network.